Good morning and welcome to the 39th CALLERLAB Convention in Nashville, Tennessee. Today is April 2nd, 2012, and this is the Teaching Outside the Box Intersession. I am Dottie Welch, and your panelists today are Betsy and Bob Briggs. Betsy is from North Brunswick, New Jersey. She's been square dancing since 1952, calling squares since 1962, calling contras since 1975. She's taught over 50 sets of beginner lessons, over 20 sets of plus advanced and challenge lessons, and has basic, mainstream, and plus videos on the market. Calls regularly for 4 square dance clubs, basic through challenge, 2 basic programs at senior centers, CALLERLAB accredited caller coach, and serves as chair of the caller training committee. She has been a member of CALLERLAB since 1976 and attended every convention since then, serving her 5th term on the Board of Governors. Also belongs to Roundelab, ContraLab, the Lloyd Shaw Foundation, and Gay Callers Association.
In my spare time.
And active locally in the Callers Council of New Jersey. Bob Briggs is from Centennial, Colorado. He began calling in 1975. He's chairman of the Committee for Community and Traditional Dance and is an active participant of several other committees. As a professional caller and teacher, he has conducted seminars for CALLERLAB on non-dancer parties and community dances, and been the caller cure for several clubs in the Denver community for almost 30 years. For the past decade, Bob and his wife, Aileen, have conducted many classes each year, and at present he presents an Introduction to Square Dancing class, 6 sessions, an Intermediate Square Dancing class, 8 sessions, and a Mainstream class, 8 sessions. And these classes have brought scores of dancers to a variety of clubs. And I am Dottie Welch. I'm from the Halifax area of Nova Scotia, Canada. I have been square dancing since my childhood in New England and calling since 1983 for beginners to challenge and contras, always including lessons as appropriate. I regularly call for 3 square dance clubs, 1 contra club, and at a senior center. And I also call in the schools to perform Nova Scotia and for various beginner dance parties. I've been a member of CALLERLAB since 1995 and have attended 15 conventions, counting this one, plus 2 mini meetings. I have served as the chairman of the Choreographic Applications Committee since 2004 and also been editor of the CD Journal since the same year. I belong to ContraLab, and I'm a member of Maritime and Nova Scotia Callers and Cuers organizations. So, lots of experience up in front here. What we would like to do today is share with you some unique ideas and concepts on how to teach dancers. Learn some new teaching tips, understand the significance of the teaching order, and find out how to use some formations other than squares when teaching. We'd like you to share in the discussion and inject your experiences in how to make learning easier and more entertaining. So we kind of began with the thought that the standard approach to teaching a square dance class is that it's taught separately from the club dance. All the teaching and dancing is done in squares. A planned teaching order is used, and the CALLERLAB definitions are used as the basis for teaching. We have interpreted teaching outside the box as any of several teaching techniques that are different from the standard approach. There are numerous ways in which one can do things differently, and we have chosen to focus on 4 different areas. First being creative approaches to the teaching of specific calls. Secondly, teaching a class in conjunction with club dances. Third, specific teaching order sequences that make teaching and learning easier. And fourth, utilizing formations other than squares for some of the teaching. So we're going to begin with Betsy, and you'll soon find out what she's going to talk about. Since we're a little bit short of time, I'm just going to let her begin, and then we'll move onward.
All right, actually, I'll 1, 2, 1, 2.
It's this one. It's already really hard. You may want this one.
1, 2. Oh, there it is. Yeah, I like this one. All right. Yes, this will record better. I think that one may need new batteries. Okay. Now, I have a couple of different things to talk about. What I decided to pick was ways that were somewhat different for teaching certain calls that I have found work for me. Basically, we tend to teach people the way we were taught. It worked for us. And I'm not going to get into the fact that there are a lot of different learning styles, because you've probably heard that at some point in time in your calling career, that we need to appeal to the different learning styles. But we tend to teach how we, in the manner that we were taught, use the words that our caller taught us, and we follow the same pattern. It worked for us, but it may not work for everyone else. So I found a couple of things based on different groups that I did. I'm going to stand up because I think I feel better. I'm going to not move the chair. This chair is taped to the floor.
Go ahead. You're correct. It is.
Yes. When they were taping down the cords, they taped the chair to the floor. Having surmounted that difficulty, I want to talk about first, I have like 4 examples of different ways to think about teaching a call. The first one is grand square. I also work in a senior center for a group of people who are probably 70 to 80 something. It's not a residential center. It's where people drive or are bused to the center or maybe walk. So they're active folks, but they may not learn as quickly as some other people. And when I started, I had a bunch of people, all of whom were very enthusiastic, basically none of whom had square danced on a regular basis in their lives. Maybe they did a dance party at some point, but I had no angels. It was the blind leading the blind. I had to communicate with my words in order to make them understand me. And words are an inexact science, let me tell you. They do not communicate what is in my brain to your brain very well often. So one time I got to the point where I was going to teach grand square, and this was probably after a year of calling for these people, because it took a while to get things going. And incidentally, they have achieved selected basic calls. We do not dance the entire basic program A, 1 and 2, or A and B, whatever numbers or letters we're naming it right now, but we dance calls that I've selected that will work for them. And we dance on a regular basis once a week. So I decided to teach grand square because it was a small group that week, and my husband had come along. We weren't sure if we'd have a whole square because we'd had snow and the schools were still closed, so he wasn't working, and we weren't sure how many of the seniors were going to brave getting out of their houses and into their cars and over to the senior center. So he said, I'll come along and fill in if I'm needed. So I said, this is a good time to teach grand square. I got a helper on the floor. And we practiced teaching grand square. And I personally like to teach grand square as having them practice, and it seems so silly, but it works, having them practice turn first. And I have the sides turn and face their partner, and then when I say turn, the heads will turn and face their partner, the sides will turn and face the center of the square, and we repeat turn several times until everybody looks at me funny. And then we practice walking. And we walk forward, and then we walk backward. And then we walk forward, and then we walk backward. And then we put them together. And that worked until I said reverse. Reverse went totally haywire, to put it in polite terms. And I said, well, I got them through what I consider half of a grand square. Why don't I dance that? Because that makes them happy. They're succeeding. All I have to do is remember not to say reverse, and I'm only singing for like 16 beats as opposed to 32. So we danced half a grand square for probably 3 months. Gesundheit. And then I taught heads face and reverse grand square. And we practiced, sides face grand square, now reverse grand square, and we practiced it specifically probably for another couple of months before I just said sides face grand square and sung the whole chorus on a singing call. And did not ever say the reverse, and it then became automatic. So my point is, if you can get them through part of the figure, and it's workable for you, have the discipline to dance that part of the figure, give them success, and then add the rest, rather than continuing to confuse the issue. That same theory I applied to the call square through. Square through, we know, is 4 hands. If I say head square through, I expect them to go 4 hands. And a lot of us, including me for a very long time, taught head square through and taught all 4 hands. There are numerous pitfalls in teaching head square through or side square through or anybody square through 4 hands. There's basically bad body flow built into the call. That doesn't make it a bad call. It's simply the way it is. And we know that if you give a right hand and walk by somebody and hang on to that hand, the person on the right side of the couple will be pulled away from the direction that they need to turn, which is to their left. It's built into the call. And we wonder why the guys always whip around after the second call. It's because we give a left hand, but the men or the people on the left have to turn to the right. And it's bad kinesiology, to use the really fancy term. That's the science of body flow, I believe. So I said, let's start and back up. I don't remember why I started this, but I said, okay, we're going to teach you a new call. It's called square through. We're going to go one hand, which is basically you touch hands and pass through. But the point is, if I start with that, I can get across the concept, the idea to the people that you turn in the square through if you want to continue. You finish the square through back to back, bumper to bumper, rear bumpers, with the last person you touched. And I'm not going to keep them in square through one hand for very long. Let me tell you, it's kind of boring. But I will do a couple of sequences where we square through one hand. And then I will have them, okay, now we're going to continue. And we'll walk through, squaring through 2 hands. A right hand walk by, turn to face your partner, left hand walk by. Now, we're not going on, so you're still bumper to bumper with the last person you touched. And I will dance them, depending on the group. I may dance for the rest of that teaching session with square through 2 and never do any more. If they're really catching on and they're comfortable, then I move on to 3 and 4 hands. But each time we're going to walk through and we turn because we want to continue. It makes it positive rather than negative, if that makes any sense to you. So I may postpone to the next week, square through 3 or 4. Or maybe 2 weeks if the group isn't catching on and I really want them to make sure they don't hang on till their arms are like pretzel twisted or anything like that. And that's another thing I stress, is you touch hands and walk past. We try not to say pull by because that involves a lot of effort that may be not what we want in our dancing family. But I say touch hands and walk by, and don't let your hand extend past your hip, because you can get yourselves in trouble. But we'll practice square through 2 and then square through 3, and then we'll get to the full square through. And at some point after that, I can tell them, if I say head square through, I expect all 4 hands. Rather than saying square through 4 and now we're going to fractionalize it or break it down. To me, it's a more positive way to go. Turning the page. Star through. How many times have you had people have trouble with a correct hand on star through? You say it over and over again. It's ladies left, man's right. You touch hands, they're on the same side. You can use any number of words. When they're in facing couples, I truly believe that they are close enough that it creates problems with the teaching of square through. So I had some inspiration, I'm not sure where or how. I think it was the same senior group. I had them all in a circle. And I had them face their corner. Now, everybody, if I turn to face my corner, I turn right. Raise the hand towards the center of the circle and point it. Wave it around. Now, smile at your corner and touch palms. See the little arch. Walk forward, and the men go around the outside. Lady walk under the little arch, face the center of the circle. I'm no longer talking right hand and left hand. Right hand and left hand is a big factor for a lot of people. There are, I forget how many percent, at least 10% of adults do not automatically know their left from their right. We're teaching something, maybe more, but we're teaching something where right and left are very important, and people can't do it and they get embarrassed. If I can eliminate that barrier, then I'm going to eliminate that barrier. So if we do that continually, you circle left, now face your new corner. Okay, raise those hands, point them, touch palms with your new corner, smile. Walk forward. Lady go under, man go around. Face the center of the circle. I've also eliminated fractions. Turning a quarter. You know, not all of us like math. So turning a quarter may not be the way we want to talk to people. And what happens is after you practice it in a circle, I'm talking too fast. After you practice star through in a circle several times, you can go 4 hands around your back to your partner. Then you have a better chance of succeeding when they're in a smaller group. You can try having the head star through and then pass through and work to the outsides and work it from there. And if it doesn't work and they're having trouble, go back to the circle. Because it's a different way of thinking about it. And you can also, we're going to be talking, I know, about other formations. You can have people working in one big circle without squares and do a number of star throughs and get that. You get muscle memory. And a lot of people, the way they dance is not the way we recite the definitions. They dance as their bodies remember the feel. And if you can get them to succeed so their bodies remember the correct feel, they will do it in other places for you, in a lot of cases. Now, the other thing that I have decided should not be taught in a square is lead right. That's one of the other ones, an example. What I end up doing, like everyone in this room except the other 2 presenters are facing me, and that's where I would have dancers in pairs to lead right. And I'd say, now join hands with your partner. Everyone is going to walk and turn it would take 1 step forward and turn 90 degrees to face the wall over here. And this wall, the long, boring wall. Okay, so everybody, take hands with your partner. Take a little step forward, but not much, and turn 90 degrees to face the long, boring wall. Okay, now you just turned which way? You turned to your right. We call that lead right. Now, do it again. This time you're going to face the wall that was behind you before. It's another long, boring wall. It's a little shorter. But walk forward, turn 90 degrees to the right. Now, this time you're going to get an exciting wall. It has a lovely sconce with fake candles and a door. So turn 90 degrees, lead right. And the last time, of course, they're going to be facing me. Once they've done it by themselves, then you can put them into a square where the space is tighter. And not only do the folks have to worry about walking in an arc, but the men have, from a square set, the men have to worry about not running into each other. Because if everybody led right in a square, exactly the way that they would need to with the proper space, the 2 guys would run right into each other, which we probably would not condone. So we have to tell them about passing left shoulders. But already they have the muscle memory about turning that quarter and facing a different wall. And that will give them a better feeling. So those are the ideas that I had, and you can apply it to a lot of different things. Think of what creates a problem when you're teaching, and how can you do something a little differently to change that problem. Maybe you want to work in little groups of 4 rather than the whole square, and we'll be talking about that. Maybe you want to work in a big circle rather than the square, because it'll be better for that. The other thing I want to talk about is different ways of doing lessons, and we've talked about this before, but it works for our club. We managed to get the experienced dancers in our club to buy into this idea for several reasons. One was we didn't have another night. The group that I call for, my home club, started on the Rutgers University campus in New Jersey. Rutgers is a state college in New Jersey. And so there were a bunch of people who learned to dance in college, and when we left campus, they also left campus and came with us because they were already graduated, and then we had to adapt in order to continue to dance. So one of our adaptations was we changed our dance time to Sunday afternoon. Why? When you've got a career and kids, you can't come out on a weeknight. We used to dance on Thursday nights because Friday and Saturday were date nights on campus, and Sunday was when you did the homework you hadn't done all weekend. So, hey, it's true. So we changed. But if you dance on Sunday afternoon, the parents can bring the kids can play in the corner, and the parents can dance, and they can still get home in time to get everybody to bed, so they'll not be dragging when they have to get up the next day. So that's what we did. And what we ended up doing is becoming a family club. But because they have careers, the kids have 5,000 activities. There's not another night for us to teach lessons. So we decided a while ago, we're going to do lessons an hour before the club dance. And then we invite the people in lessons to stay and dance every other set. So we'll have a full mainstream tip, and then a tip wherever the class is. And if it's after lesson number 1, that tip is going to be circle left and circle right and forward and back and pass through and promenade home and whatever we've taught them in lesson number 1. And the dancers in the club bought into it so that when we announce it's an all skate, everybody can dance, class and club. All the club members do not sit down and watch. They get involved and dance with the class members to start making them feel comfortable. What it gives the class members is a good feel for the club. They feel a part of the group, and they get floor time, dancing time, where we're not teaching anything new necessarily, but we're practicing the things they taught with experienced dancers who, if they need a hand, can reach out and take their hand and help them. And that gives them more experience and makes them more comfortable. I won't say they're perfect, but they're more comfortable, and consequently, they don't leave us. We have had at least a couple of people go through, I would have considered them graduated the year before. They still get up only for the class tips. It's their choice. But they have a place to dance, and sometimes they come out early for their teaching because they feel they need the teaching, but they have a place to dance. And maybe after 2 years of dancing with us, then they'll get up for the full mainstream tip. I don't know. It's their choice. As long as they're comfortable, they're coming, they're a part of the group, it works. And so that's another way of thinking outside the box. We only have an hour to teach, but then we have 2 more hours or another hour and a quarter or half of the other dance to practice. So they get the practice time, and it works for us. The club has actually grown in the last. 5 years ago, I would not have bet 50 cents that this club would still be in existence. We had to find a new hall because we've grown. And some of the kids who we let play in the corner dance with us. At any given Sunday, I have a friend who calls with me. Dan and I share the club. And at any given Sunday at this point in time, we may have dancers on the floor aged 9 to 90, because Dan's father dances with us. And people come and visit because they find us fun. So it's another way to think outside the box. If we had tried to do it the standard way, I would not be talking to you about this club. Thank you. I think that covers.
Thank you, Betsy. Good ideas. I will share with you that I also have a club that dances class and club together, partly because I didn't have a separate night that I could call for them, and also just because the numbers were too small to justify 2 groups. And I will say more about some of the things that I do in order to accommodate that situation, but she's very correct that having them integrated in some way right from the beginning is a very positive thing in terms of making the new dancers feel a part of the club and feel welcome. So carefully consider that if you have those options. All right, we're going to move on to Bob, and I'm passing the microphone over.
All right. Good morning, everyone. As a teacher for more than 20 years of square dancing, I've taught lots of different formats of dancing, square dance classes. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, I believe there's really 4 phases associated with the life of a caller related to new dancers. The first phase is the recruiting phase. And I'm heavily involved in recruiting, because of the next thing that I talk about. I don't teach class for a club. Right now I'm teaching classes that feed 6 clubs. They're my classes. I organize the classes. I get the halls. I collect the fees. I pay the rent. I set up the liquids and whatever else that we're going to have. And so I'm a very unusual guy in the Denver metro area because I'm the only one who's doing this. One of the classes, my Monday night class, is for two. Basically, the destination is two different clubs. They sometimes provide angels, they sometimes don't. The Tuesday night class is for three different clubs. They don't have enough recruiting that they want to form their own class. Actually, they want to, but they don't have the ability to do that. The clubs are actually having more trouble with this, but they're delighted with the result. The third class I've been teaching for more than 20 years in Castle Rock, Colorado, and that particular class is really aimed at one club because it's the only one that's local. The other thing that I do that is different than outside the box is I don't teach square dancing as a class. In the intro, Dottie said he presents an intro to square dance class 6 weeks. That's a standalone class. People can come and take that. Now, do they have any place to dance when they're done? No. But have they been introduced to square dancing? The answer is yes. And more than 90% of them continue. The intermediate square, and that particular class is basic 1 off of the teaching order list. So they're getting 30 basics in the course of doing that. And we're going to talk a little bit about the mechanics of that here in a minute. The intermediate square dance class is the second one. It's 8 weeks. That's basically basic 2. And lots of fun with the basic 1. Now they've finished the basic list, and one of these days I'm going to get a basic club started that will dance just basic. That's sort of a dream of mine, is to be able to get there. And we have a couple of things that we're doing in the Denver metro area, which I think could lead to a basic group that meets regularly. And we actually have people that need to move through that, both upwards and downwards. In most areas, most big cities in this country need that kind of thing in place. The third class I teach is another 8 weeks. So you notice we're up to 22. When you add all this together, those last 8 weeks are the mainstream list. Now, I am also a believer that I'm not going to teach just standard application. I'm teaching as much of the variation as I can, and that's a little bit dependent upon the class and how fast it's moving. The younger the class, the faster it moves, the more they're going to get all of the definition and work through all of the patterns. There are a few classes that go beyond 22. I had one this year that needed another 4 weeks. One of the advantages of me running the class is I don't have to end it. I can set the expectation as long as I have the hall, as long as I have the patience to do it. I can set where we end, which means that I can generate success out of the people that I'm teaching. I'm not forced to be done with graduation on the 20th week and throw them at a club what they're not ready to be in. So this is an advantage I have. Now, I've spent more than 10 years establishing this sort of non-standard approach. I would actually encourage more people to do this. It does require that you not be just the hired hand. And I know most of the callers in this country are used to saying, yeah, I'll come teach for you, and I want X amount per night, and that's what we're going to do. And they show up and they teach their class, and they go home. I'll tell you, I'm doing much, much better in my classes, both producing square dancers for our community. And I tell people, this is my objective. I'm not producing square dancers for this club, or this club. I'm producing square dancers for our community. Square dancers that you teach for an individual club will go to that club, but sooner or later they'll find the club that they feel comfortable in, or they'll quit dancing. Some people say, well, Bob, how do you get the clubs that are coming and helping you from not fighting over the new people? And I said, because here's a rule. If they want to help Angel and they want me to help feed their club, every club that participates in that class with Angels and helping me recruit, because they do that, they must provide for the remainder of the current dance year free membership. So those people that are graduating, in the case where there was 3 clubs, are in fact members of 3 clubs the day they graduate. The clubs charge them only member fees when they go to those dances. The clubs are allowed to call them for however long that is till the next dance year. And then the people have to make a choice which club, it's their own choice as which club they join. This has eliminated much of the "they're my dancer" thing that you get when you have a multi-cycle kind of class or some of the others. All right, so I'm a little off of the track of my handout, but I wanted to get that in because it's very pertinent to how we teach. Obviously, I've had small classes, and I find myself in a situation where I have either more dancers or less dancers. Dottie, tell me when I'm running overtime, because I'm likely. Today, I would say anywhere from 4 to 6 people. All right. The question was, what is a small class? I have taught classes with angels and 2 new dancers. I have never tried to teach a class with less than 4 couples, but I often have potentially 6. And so one of the things that I have started doing is periodically, when I don't have enough angels to make 2 squares, what do? You know, you get this situation where you got 6 couples and 1 more person or 2 more people. And in this world we live in, we got extra ladies. Thank goodness I use a wireless microphone and I can dance too. My wife comes along all the time and she dances too. So it doesn't take much to make up a square, but periodically, so we're going to have to learn in some variety of ways. So we've already mentioned 2 couple situations, and there's a session on 2 couple dancing, I believe, tomorrow, late this afternoon. 2 couple dancing can be a lot of fun. It's a little hard the first night to do because you don't have enough people to create the variety. Now, 4 couple, everybody's used to that, and we're good at that, and we'll talk a little bit about some of that. 6 couple. I was actually going to put up a rectangle here and show you some things, but there just plain isn't room. So you're going to have to visualize. How many people don't know what 6 couple is? 6 couple rectangular. Everybody knows. Not hex. 6 couple rectangular. Okay, 6 couple rectangular. You have a number 1 couple, and you have another number 1 couple. So 2 couples side by side. You have a number 2 couple, and you have 2 couples in the number 3 spot, side by side. And you have a number 4 couple. Now, Betsy was talking about lead to the right. What happens if in a 6 couple square when you lead to the right? Does anybody know? If you've taught them lead to the right properly, you end up with 3 sets of 2 facing each other. It's really cool. All right, and it gives you some really neat potential choreography. Now, if you are using modules, or you're using singing call figure kind of modules, most of them work in the 6 couple environment. There are some that don't, and many of them feel different. So the first time you try to do 6 couple, you're going to go, is that right? But, for example, if you said right and left through, ladies chain, star through, pass through, you have to visualize this. Now, you've effectively done a lead to the left is where you are. Not a lead to the right, so I just confused you there, but I'm sorry. But if you did a right and left through, and not beginner's night, but swing through, boys run, bend the line. Where are you? You got facing. Do a right and left through. Anybody know where I am? Star through. You're looking at your corner. At least I am. You can do choreography. One of the things is if you're a sight caller, sighting, you got 6 people you got to keep track of now. If you're a sight caller, not everything's in my head. A lot of it's on the floor for me because I am a sight caller. If you put couple number 2 and 4 back home with their partners, the other 4 work themselves out really easily, unless you've done something screwy. You're going to have to play with this yourself, because there's no way in the world I can tell you exactly what to do. But be aware that it is symmetric choreography. And being symmetric choreography, if you put, say, the number 2 couple either in the 2 spot or the 4 spot, you can work it out, and it'll be easy for you visually. If you're a mental image caller, it gets a little bit more complicated. But this is something you're going to have to work with yourself, because we can give you all sorts of little hints and so on and so forth, but until you do it. Did you have a comment in the back? Hold on. We need to get it on the tape. Do I actually use...
Do you actually use that when you're teaching a basic class?
Not early on necessarily, but I do by the time I'm into the intermediate, because I can.
Okay.
And it creates some opportunity for getting them to understand the basic call in its true form without
the other question I have for you is back what you originally said about teaching your classes. Do you start all your classes in September, usually back?
I start 2 of them in September and 1 of them in February.
Okay.
So there's a cycle there.
Incidentally, when my group at a senior center doesn't have enough for 2 squares, I have worked with the limited basics with 6 couple dancing. So you can do it at a certain point.
Only because you've been mentioning the 6 couple dancing. We actually went to a simplified version of that. We just call it lines of 6. And we have 3 couples across the front, 3 couples numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We don't even call them heads or sides. And it's almost like contra, but it's not contra because it's all basic square dance moves, and they don't have to remember who the heads and the sides, and they don't have to remember what they do, because just lines of 6 is very simple. Back them out in a circle, Alaman left, right and left, grand 7 hands, and they're all back in their lines of 6 again.
One of the things is there's Sicilian circles, there's what we would refer to as improper contra formations. And so there's a bunch of different formations that can be used to help you in these situations where you got out of number couples. Actually, improper contra lines with the couples facing up and down is a series of 2 couples. It's very much like Sicilian, a circle around the hall, but it's up and down the hall. And you have to define some rules. But that's another formation that you can use to teach. Ron, did you have a comment? You got to be on the tape, Ron.
You have 1, 2. You have 3 different progressions. You have a first half of the basic, second half of the basic, and the mainstream. Are these contiguous in calendar time?
Yes, they are. So I run them straight through. For example, yesterday I had a substitute caller, and my wife was doing the 2nd class of the intermediate that started the Sunday after Super Bowl. I teach Sunday afternoon from 1 to 3, and obviously I can't start in September on Sundays because I'm going to be competing with football. So I've been starting for more than 10 years the Sunday after Super Bowl, and darn it, they moved it a month or a week, and I had to change some things. Sort of going on here. So recognizing that these different formations that you can teach in can be your friend, can help you. And to limit yourself to 4 couple sets is the message I think we want to get across, is that if you limit yourself to always needing 4 couples, you always have somebody sitting out, and you have a greater need for angels, which sometimes you don't have. And so you have to be able to be flexible in this area. And I think that's the real message, is be flexible. The other aspect, and you'll read this in the handout, is my daughter has a education recreation degree, and then she went to grad school and got a degree in experiential education. And experiential education is defined as, I can tell you something, I can tell you about it, and you will go, uh-huh. I can show you, and you'll go, okay. Or I can have you do it, and you will understand. That's what my interpretation of experiential education is. I was talking to someone last night here, and I related to something. If we can relate what we teach to something we already understand, and I'm going to use Betsy's example of Grand Square. She said, okay, let's turn a quarter. Okay, we can understand that, right? Back up, go forward. We can understand that. So we're relating to things we understand. When we say join hands and circle, what are we assuming? We're assuming that they, in kindergarten, somewhere learned that this is a circle. All right? So we're assuming some basic things when we teach. When we teach anything from scratch, join hands. How do we join hands? We have to we're assuming some basic framework. Now, if we start there and we work ourselves forward, from in any progression of learning, we're working our way from one set of concepts to the next, to the next, to the next. I've heard the term building blocks. I did something I hadn't done for Square Through this year, and I don't do it the way Betsy does it, but I did something different. I had everybody face the music wall, and I said, okay, everybody, I want you to walk down the block. And I want you to turn right down the next street. Walk down the block. Turn right down the next street. And I want you to go around the block. Okay? Now, everybody understands walking around the block. Now I want you to stand on the other side of the street, and I want you to walk around the block to the left. Now, what are we doing? We're walking around the block. But what are we? We're taking advantage of something we understand to create a new concept. Now, we're going to talk about the fact that, say we go normal couple, and we say, okay, boys, you're going to walk around the block to the right. Ladies, you're going to walk around the block to the left. And if you meet somebody, I want you to take a hand and walk by. We've used some of what we know to build something else. Now, I also teach when you're teaching dancing, if your hand moves by the seam of your pants, you have to let go. So if the hand goes by here, I'm going to let go, because she wanted over there anyway. Because what that does is it helps them understand. And by the way, many of the classical ballroom dance style, other forms of dance style, teach that. If your hand goes by the seam of your pants, let go. All right? It's just an interesting little concept. So that was something I wanted to get across, is build something. Scott Byers yesterday, he said, I just did a blast class in Cody, Wyoming for 19 new dancers, and they've doubled the size of their club. It was really cool. He did a blast class in 4 nights in a week. And he said, one of the things is imagine that you're standing on the driver's side of a van. He was teaching walk and dodge, by the way. And he said, okay, the lady, I want you to open the door. And the husband, you're behind carrying a big screen TV that you're going to throw through the door. So, obviously it was a broken one anyway. Anyway, so he wanted the ladies to visualize that they're sliding the door to the right while the husband's bringing the TV up to put in the van. Is that a visual you can use to teach walk and dodge? I went, okay, I can use that tomorrow as an example. But that's the kind of thing. It's taking something real that you've already experienced in your life and using it to, as Scott requires, to link a new term to an old one. And he believes very firmly that you end up being able to teach faster and they retain it longer because of the linking from something they know to something they're learning. The last item, real quick, is we are teaching geometry. Now, Betsy says, no, they don't want to learn geometry. But when you say, I'm in a square, everybody learns fairly quickly what that is. When you say head square through 4, you want them to know that they're going to end up in boxes. If you're going to do a star through from there, you want them to know that it's going to end up in a line and recognize the difference between the box they were in, the movement, and where they end up. They're not going to end up in a wiggly line. They're going to end up in a line. If they did a star through and veer to the left, I want them to see they have a two-face line from where I was. So we're teaching geometry. One of the hardest things for some people to learn is that some of these things are very angular and they end up facing a wall. Betsy brought up something that I teach differently than she does. Do you know where star through came from? Well, that too. By the way, the comment was snapperoo. Can I have 2 couples right here in front, real quick? Just any 4 people. I got a lady, preferably a lady and a gent, normal couples. All right, so if you hold up the inside hands and make a star and put them up there all in a group, you have a star, right? There's a problem with this star, though, right? Because the ladies are going counterclockwise and the gents are going clockwise. So you would run into each other. So what's one of the things that you're doing here is this is a star. If you said star through, all you're saying is the people on the right are going to go under the arms of the people on the left. Do it. And you're going one place. You're effectively proceeding around the star in the direction you're facing. If you would do it again, do it again. All right, you're progressing around the star in the direction you're facing. Now, does that help you teach star through? I think Betsy's way is a great way to teach it because it gets rid of this. But this is sort of where it comes from. Thank you. So the fact that you have that star and you're actually going through the star is sort of my interpretation of how to explain that. So down at the bottom, there's a little quote, a little piece of information. Dorothy Shaw, Lloyd Shaw was very instrumental in the rebirth of square dancing in the 1930s and 40s. And Dorothy Shaw was his wife, and one of her comments that she made, I don't know exactly when because I wasn't there, but she said every dance should make a good doodle, squiggle. If you take your dances and you take the number one gent and you were to draw the pattern that number one gent makes on the floor, hopefully there are no abrupt turns in it, would be what her comment would be. It should flow from one place to another. That is true if you have 5 basics or 68. You should be able to teach your dancers to flow from one figure to the next that takes you in a formation that makes a good doodle. You will have far fewer failures as a caller and as a teacher if you can figure out how to put choreography together that allows them to flow. Now, can you do things that are tough? Yes. Do you need to know the difference between tough and simple? Absolutely. One of the comments that, I'm going to pick on John here, is John has put himself in places where he goes, but they can do it. They can do that call. And I said, yes, they can. But it's more difficult from there than it is other places. And recognizing that as a caller is one of the things you have to do. Anyway, I've covered most of my topics, so I'm going to let Dottie.
Thank you, Bob. So yes, but you have a question? Somebody run the mic down there.
No, don't think. You can repeat.
Butch?
No, very simply. What do you
Butch?
We have our instructions.
Yes, ma'am. What do you do, Bob, if you have 8 women show up for class?
The answer is that at the beginning of it, I'm going to dance material that will allow them to dance. Initially, it'll be gender-free dancing because I can do that. Sooner or later, it'll be left-hand dancer, right-hand dancer. I have a little bit of a philosophy that says, first of all, ladies are always ladies. Men are always men. I don't care what place you are dancing in the square. I refer to left-hand part, right-hand part, and yes, I've been calling long enough that it's really, really difficult not to say boys and girls. But I try to go to gents and ladies. There's a gents role and a ladies role. I have tried to convince myself to go to lead and follower and haven't gotten there. As a general rule, I will arrange to have enough people that dance both parts. My wife dances both parts. I dance both parts. We have several ladies in the group. And very often we have ladies that come to learn the other part. So we're getting a variety of that. Thank you, Dottie.
I know for me, this is great about Grand Square. I didn't know what to do. So I got painter's tape, the blue painter's tape, and I put down the square in their boxes and told them they don't get out of their boxes, and then they knew which way to turn, and that seemed to help them out a lot.
Yeah.
To address that gender question, I have made paper signs that I've tied together with string so that I can put them over somebody's head, and the back and the front both says boy. Maybe it should say gent. But at least that helps them and the other members of the square if we do have a lady dancing the man's part.
Lee?
Yeah, there's a few things here I don't agree with, right? Which is not unusual for me because I'm kind of a rebel in this activity. Number one, as far as the Grand Square is concerned, I would not teach it that way. There's no reason why they can't do the whole thing in one lesson. But what I do is I have them do 2 couples first, all right? And everybody does the same thing to begin with. Somebody doesn't back up, but they all learn the initial heads to start, all right? And then after a while, after doing the heads, then I can bring them into a situation, now let's do it backwards, okay? Never had a problem with that. Some of the things you suggested, like looking at a wall and looking at a car, getting out this way, are harder than the calls that we're teaching. There's no reason to pick out some kind of an apparatus or a theory or whatever else are harder than teaching the actual call itself. Now, as far as the square through is concerned, all right, put a chair down right in the middle of the floor, and I walk through it. And I don't teach square through 4 right away. I teach only square through 2. Now, the square through probably comes after you've already taught pass-through in California twirl. I'm pretty sure. So if you pass through California twirl, let's say you're doing a square through 2. I would not do 4 hands. That's too hard. And the hardest thing about the square through is the last hand to pull by, because you're going to have a tendency to want to face in. So you give a right pull by, face in, give a left pull by, and they're back to back. Then you can use your California twirl and then start it again, square through 2. That's how I do it. And there was some other things I was just thinking. Oh, on the star through, you forgot to mention that the person you're looking at becomes your partner. That was left out altogether. Now, I don't want to upset anybody, but while I'm sitting here, these are the things, you know. Now, when you do a star through and that girl becomes your partner, I know you're going to be upset with the fact, but I want you to star through with the girl here, so using the same hand twice. Doesn't matter. So they get the feeling that it's the inside hand. Now, no way you're going to teach a star through in the beginning where you half sashayed, because the half sashayed doesn't come until later, because then you have to think about using the outside hands. So you concentrate on the star through from facing couples. And maybe you forgot to do that, but the star through is you're going to get that person as your partner. So those are the things I wanted to mention. That's how I deal with it. As far as the square through is concerned, I get on the floor and I do it myself. And they watch that we're working in a box of 4. The next thing, you started to talk about 6 couples with the hexagons, the trapezoid, whatever you use. A square dance is 4 couples. If you got 6 couples, you give out 6 numbers. Very quickly, you teach whatever you want to do, have them sit down, and then 5 and 6 come in. I'm not going to get involved with 6-couple dancing when you're teaching beginners. So I just wanted to make that point. Actually, there are 4 or 5 points. Okay.
Randy.
Okay.
Yes, please state your name. The last one was Lee Cotman. Now we have Randy Doherty.
Randy Doherty. All of us have our own opinions and so on, and that was his view of being a phys ed teacher. Phys ed. This is my opinion from being a math teacher. 3 is not that much harder than 2. So I get into the Sicilian circles when I'm going to do square through, and I do Sicilian circles with teaching square through 1, move on to the next. Square through 1, move on to the next. And they get that. And then you can add 3, because then they're just going back the other direction from where they came from. And eventually, a 1 and a 3 and a 5 work really good from Sicilian circles. And I'll do that maybe our first night of lessons of square through. Once I get them back into the square, I teach it totally different. Once I'm back into the actual 4-couple square, I do it without hands the first time. Then I use hands, but I make it a right pull by, make your turn. A right pull by, make a turn. Right pull by, make a turn. Right pull by, don't turn. And they realized that wasn't very comfortable using the same hand every time, so then I alternate hands. But all of us has got different ways of teaching. So I like your star through from the big circle. I never thought of that before. But I think I agree with Lee when he says you never get into doing the half sachet star through in the beginning. If we were using that type of knowledge, logically, that thing that you did with the star through, if we were half sashayed, I don't know how that would be like an archy star through, wouldn't it be? I know you would not do that, but just, there's going to be some guy in your class that probably went to MIT or whatever, and he's going to be thinking along those lines, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, I want to say a few things about the rest of what's on my handout, if you don't mind that I do that before you carry on, because we're going to run out of time here. So if you look at my piece, I gave you the front part at the beginning. One of the things that's happened to me, I've found myself with 7 couples often at the beginning of the dance. And I want everybody up on the floor. So I kind of fell into the habit of saying, okay, let's make a big circle. And it started right from the first night because I would start in a big circle anyway. And then I realized, you know what? I can teach a lot of stuff from a big circle. All those circle moves, unless you do something like ladies chain, if you keep people in the circle or promenading around the inside or starring around the inside, you can teach them just as well from a big circle of 5 couples or 6 couples or 7 couples. You wouldn't want to do it with a humongous circle, but if you're faced with those kinds of numbers, as you can teach them in a square. The only thing you have to watch out for is that grand right and left doesn't bring you back to your partner. And you have to make it very clear. And I stick with it, grand right and left is 4 hands. And the 5th one is the one you get. At the moment it's not your partner, but that's because you would get your partner in a square. So the second and third pages of this handout are a whole bunch of examples of things that you might do from a big circle. And there's a lot of the standard break figures there, but there are also some things that are a bit creative that you might want to try. Because I found myself thinking, all right, why should I always do this for the boys in and the girls on the outside, for instance? We all do circle left, circle right, go single file, girls step out and backtrack around the outside and do-sa-do your partner or turn your partner by the right or some such thing. Well, why can't we circle right and then circle left and go single file and have the boys step out and backtrack? And when they come back to their partner, turn their partner by the left into a roll promenade. So there's lots of little kind of twists on the standard thing to further drill the dancers on the possibilities of these moves. There's examples here of wrong way grand. For instance, circle left, Alaman left your corner, partner do-sa-do, pass through and left turn the next person back to your partner for a wrong way, grand right and left. And when you meet again, you swing. So look through them. We're running short of time, and I'm not going to go through a lot of examples. Anybody that's receiving this with the handouts, look at the handout. It should be on the MP3 disc, along with the, actually it's on it's on a regular text disc, that's separate from the recordings. So there's several ideas there. Work your way through them. If I have time, I'll come back. Then I want to point out that there's a page of contra figures for couples facing couples, which was mentioned earlier. Now, I've only suggested a few things, but these are ones that I have used in the past for at a specific point when I'm trying to teach a certain thing. So, for instance, one of these is the flutter wheels. So I've taught flutter wheels usually before I call this, but if necessary, because I'm forced to by the numbers involved, I could teach it right from this spot, and I'll look at the next page in a minute about that kind of issue. So we could say, for instance, lines. So now we're looking at, if you're not familiar with this, a couple, a partner pair, facing another partner pair, and then another couple standing beside them and facing one, and normally I'd be doing this with 6 couples. Some of these allow for you to deal with odd numbers by putting that extra couple down at the bottom, and in some way, and you have to be a little careful. You need to take your pawns out and think, okay, where do they need to be? Standing on the right, standing at the foot, standing on the left. Depends on the contra figure. But you can work that 7th person in every time there's a change in the sequence. So flutter wheels. Lines go forward and back. Slant left. I'm using this a lot. So slant left. So I want everybody to look diagonally to the couple that's to their left. And with that person, do a right and left through. And at the end of that point, they have to make sure they end up on their footprints facing a new couple directly across. And you need to make that clear to the dancers initially when you first use this. Once they clue into how this works, it works fine. Then, once you get there, new 2, so now we're facing a new couple across. The 2 ladies lead for a flutter wheel, and the gents lead for a reverse flutter wheel, and that's in fact equal to another right and left through. 2 ladies chain over and back, so we haven't done anything, and at this point, I'm using filler here to make it fit into contras, so I'm having them start by the left. After the chain, by the way, if you do a ladies chain, you've already got left hand, and you just can put that hand into the star and go right into the star by the left, star by the right, back to your line, and lines go forward and back. And we've moved all the couples 1 position in all that process, so they have new dancers than they had at the beginning to work with. And the next time through, they're going to move again. So they get to dance with more than one couple in the process of this. Now, there's several ideas here, even up to the plus level. It's not really that hard to create one of these. You have to kind of sit down, but it's basically 2-couple choreography that you're doing. You have to be a little bit careful about what happens if they're facing out, because you really don't want to do that in most cases. Now, the other possibility is a similar thing, and somebody else was talking about this. Randy said Sicilian circles, and I thoroughly agree with Sicilian circles. If I have enough people, 6 couples of dancers is difficult to do a Sicilian circle because they lose their orientation as they go around. But if you have 8 or 10 even, 10 is my ideal minimum. But if I have 10 couples, I might use a Sicilian circle to teach something. And for instance, the left-hand column here, I'm working my way through. You could actually call these not necessarily 1, 2, 3, 4, but maybe twice through the first one, twice through the second one, because they're increasing what I consider increasing difficulty. So the first time, and every time they start with circle left and circle right, so that kind of gets them all oriented. First time they're doing the right and left through, getting themselves over there, worrying about the courtesy turn. They've just learned how to do this move. And then we do a forward and back to stabilize the situation, and then a right and left back and forward and back again. Then the opposite do-si-do, pass through and move on, changes the people they're dancing with. So they go on through to the next pair coming towards them around that big circle. So everybody understands the Sicilian circle is a couple facing a couple and another couple facing a couple arranged around a hub. So they're like spokes of a wheel all the way around. All right, so the next time through, I go right and left through over and right and left through right back. So they don't have that stabilization time. So a little bit more difficult. And the third time through, I'm doing 2 ladies chain over and back, and then right and left through over and back. Well, that shot the level of difficulty up a bit, because now they have to keep track in their mind what's the difference between ladies chain and right and left through. And you might find that you don't want to do more than just the first and second on the first night that you teach right and left through, because that's as much as they can handle. And then the very last time, we've intermixed the right and left throughs and the ladies chains. And the dancers sense that, this is getting tricky now. But if they've mastered it as they go, they feel like they've really succeeded and they've got it in their head. And I've done a similar thing with flutter wheel and reverse flutter wheel on the other column there. All right, and then we're nearing the end. On the very back page, I've put 4 what I'd kind of consider kind of classic Sicilian circle figures that aren't particularly designed for the teaching so much as for the drill and review situation. And if you were at the dance yesterday afternoon, I did the slide right contour that's in that couples facing couples. That was the one I presented. And on the back, the dip and dive for Jillian was presented by Bob. So a lot of you I know were there and you've seen those. I want to point out that the Grand Star Circle is not to be taken lightly. You need to think about how that works. It's a wonderful dance, but you have to think carefully about how you're going to teach it, because what happens here is the couple's facing forward around the circle. Some people have defined this as star half around the first couple, and then the next couple coming star left half, and then the next couple coming star right half, and then the next left half. Over the years, locally we've kind of concluded that sometimes it's easier to talk about girl is following in tandem behind the guy, and she might have to lead from behind, and you're going a weaving action around one, and around the next, and around the next, and around the next. It's tricky to teach, but once the dancers learn it, it's just beautiful wind in the face dancing. Really nice dance. So I hope those are ideas. I know I haven't had time to go through a lot, and I encourage anybody to get the material that's available to you, and look at them and see what you can find there to use for yourself. We have about 3 minutes if we have one more question back there. Where's the mic?
1, 2, 1, 2.
This is Lee.
Okay. One of the things I do at beginners, the first session, Besides teaching them a do-si-do and a seesaw, I teach them right-hand stars and left-hand stars. And, of course, how to promenade. And one of the first things I do is I have the head couples promenade all the way around till you get back home where the sides make a right-hand star and reverse the star. Then the sides do that. So they see everybody is activated right away. If we teach them a lady's chain or the right and left throughs, I change it a little bit. While the heads promenade all the way around while the others do a lady's chain or the right and left through. That's how I deal with my beginners. You can deal with them, as you like. You have everybody make a right-hand star. If we're going to teach the back track, we have to teach a single file. That's how I do that. Promenade single file, girls step out back, go around, pass them once, the second time, do-si-do. Hold up a finger. I tell them, make sure it's this finger, though. Okay? Right. But I thought I might give you an idea on how I begin with the beginners.
Yeah, Butch. I think one of the secrets here is you want to accumulate as many tricks of the trade as you can in your knowledge of how this might be done. And then you pick and choose what works for you in your situation and is your style.
Many years ago, I had the opportunity to go through 3 caller classes with Jack Lasry, and he said the same thing every class. You, as a caller, thinking simple, is equal to a person going into high school, the dancer at starting kindergarten. You have to get much more simple. I've heard from you, and I have been around Betsy long enough to hear you guys always add the little helper words, the little tricks, the little things. And so many times, callers that think they're really good teachers leave all that out, and then they wonder why they can't get the people to do something. So thank you for your verbiage that you used, and remember what Jack Lasry said, think simple.
One more, Tom Selner.
Tom Selner from Maryland. We're doing another teaching session later on, which will go even further than you had this afternoon. So if you're really interested in teaching, come see us at 2:30 this afternoon, and we have a whole bunch more ideas that will be very helpful to you.
Yes, and that's the learning style. So somebody briefly mentioned at the beginning that you've heard this. Well, if you haven't heard it, you should hear it.
Anybody else?
It's at 2:30.
Effective teaching, 2:30 right here in Hermitage B.
There's something else before. Yeah.
There's something else before.
There's a 1:00 meeting before. What's
Simple Sight?
Simple Sight, yes, in this room before. Okay.
It's also a good way to keep things simple.
I want to thank all of you for being here. I hope we've provided some ideas that will help you. Lunch.